Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Well, today, Chatham-Kent received millions of dollars in funding. That's for the explosion that happened in Wheatley almost 2 years ago to the day. Plus, a lawyer is calling out 2 auto insurance companies for offering below-par caregiver support for individuals who've suffered life-altering injuries. And an Indigenous artist is rekindling with her culture through a traditional art form, but she's learning in a rather untraditional way. Saturday marks the 2nd anniversary of the Wheatley explosion. Several buildings were damaged and hundreds displaced after an explosion of hydrogen sulfide and methane tore through a building in the downtown area. Today, Ontario's Natural Resources Minister was in the area to announce additional funding to help the municipality recover. But as Del Molnar reports, some residents want more direct access to the funding.
The video of the blast shows how devastating it was. And today, there is still an area called the safety zone that is fenced off. The province has spent about $27 million so far on the investigation and recovery from the explosion. Today, Natural Resources Minister Graydon Smith announced $11 million in funding that will go to emergency expenses such as gas monitoring, security, and external investigations. He will also fund ongoing risk management and investigation efforts to add more infrastructure to the explosion site.
I want you to know that the Ontario government is steadfast in its commitment to stand with this community as you continue to recover and as the municipality faces ongoing emergency management expenses.
But some business owners are still unsure of how today's announcement will help them and want to see more done to bring the downtown back to normal.
I don't know if we will receive any additional funding. It sounds like the municipality received money. I guess we'll wait and see how it's distributed.
I think we needed a little more specifics, but it sounds like the money is going to be able to purchase some properties, and if that happens, they get the properties purchased, maybe they get the buildings torn down, maybe things will move a little faster, but that's what we need. This place looks like a war zone. I feel like I live in the Ukraine, and I don't like living like this.
But help with that may come from $225,000 the province is funding to help with the Community Task Force on Redevelopment.
They have had some meetings and they've got some ideas about what they'd like to see for the downtown.
And this allows us to move forward with the next steps, and that'll definitely be communicated publicly with everyone in the community of Wheatley and all across Chatham-Kent. We got a professional team that will be able to take this new funding and this new information and continue on with that work and make the best steps possible for the community.
The municipality is buying 13 properties in the safety zone where there is ongoing monitoring for more gas. The source of the gas has not yet been found, but the province is pledging to find it and help other municipalities find and deal with abandoned gas and oil wells. And the minister promised today the goal is to return Wheatley to normal. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Wheatley.
Well, 2 Windsor residents say they've been shortchanged by their insurance companies. That's after car crashes changed their lives forever. As the CBC's TJ Deere explains, their lawyers are calling on those insurers to pay up.
Harry Spiritus and Raymond O'Keefe suffered life-altering injuries from car crashes a few years ago. Now, they're in the process of suing their own insurance companies, trying to get some compensation for the care they need.
Imagine going to your kitchen and making a sandwich, or stepping into or out of a bathtub. Stuff that we take for granted when we have our health, but are really, really difficult when you're recovering from really severe injuries.
Sweet says although her clients suffered broken bones all over their bodies, their companies were only willing to pay caregiver support for less than minimum wage.
It's more expensive, obviously, to pay market rates, and they're trying to pay the least amount that they can get away with.
The Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario is a government agency that protects consumer protections and regulates the insurance industry. A spokesperson did not comment on the cases of Spiritus or O'Keefe, but said their guidelines do not set an hourly wage. Instead, it caps the maximum benefit to $6,000 per month. If care costs more, they'd have to pay out of pocket. Sweet has launched lawsuits against the companies that represent Spiritus and O'Keefe, Coachman Insurance and Economical Insurance, respectively. Sweet says the suits are in their early stages.
So it would be quite a while before they're able to recover money for the care that they need. And it doesn't do a lot of good when, they're trying to get better right now.
The Insurance Bureau of Canada says insurer contributions have nothing to do with hourly wages, saying the regulatory body sets out contribution amounts for a range of injury recovery services. However, they did acknowledge that Ontario's auto insurance system has not been substantially changed in more than 30 years and are working with the province to improve the system. Sweet says cases like these can go on for at least 2 years, and if no deal is reached, they could go before the License Appeal Tribunal, where an adjudicator can take months to reach a decision. Coachman Insurance and the Ministry of Finance didn't respond to requests for comment, and Economical Insurance declined, citing privacy and timing concerns. TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
Well, an update tonight on a new Amazon delivery station that's coming to Windsor. It's expected to open in about 1 year from now. The delivery station will bring about 300 jobs to the area. It's being built on the site of the old Chrysler Paulette Road assembly plant, and the land is starting to be prepped for construction. Employees will be responsible for processing orders received from Amazon fulfillment centers and prepare them to deliver to customers in the region. Invest Windsor Essex believes the jobs will pay around $20 an hour. Amazon did not ask for or receive any tax incentives to come to the city. Finally, we're getting better news tonight on British Columbia's wildfires. Rains have been helping firefighters and are improving overall conditions. Evacuation orders and travel restrictions are being downgraded in the southern interior, and some people are being told they may soon be allowed to go home. Still, several areas remain off limits. CBC's Renee Filipponi has the latest.
There are some blue skies today in the Okanagan as rain overnight helped to reduce the smoke and improve air quality. It's led to optimism in the fight against the fires that put tens of thousands under evacuation orders and destroyed a couple hundred homes in the Okanagan region. Today, most residents here will find out the fate of their homes, with the regional district launching a website where people can put in their address and get details about the extent of the damage. Officials are also saying they will be able to rescind some alerts and orders, but it will be some time before everyone is allowed back, especially in those areas with large-scale destruction. They also want to make sure that if the situation changes in the next couple of days, they won't have to order people out for a second time. For the West Kelowna Fire Chief, it's all about safety.
We're considering things like, is the fire out in the neighborhood? We're looking at debris and hazards that may be on the roads and in the properties. The Wildfire Service has technical expertise that helps us understand, is the neighborhood protected? Is there a fire guard or burned area? Is it tied in and mopped up around your homes? And only then would we begin to consider and move on to other things.
Because of the clear conditions, they have been able to get more fire suppression activity underway from the air, with 17 helicopters working today, bucketing the flames over the 3 main fires in this region. Most of the travel restrictions put in place have now been lifted, except for in West Kelowna, with the province urging people to stay away from Lake Country and the Shuswap region. There is more rain in the forecast for this evening, but along with that precipitation comes a chance of lightning. Now, BC's Premier is promising support for evacuees from the federal, local, and provincial officials. They will be there to help in the process of recovery. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Kelowna.
The federal cabinet retreat in Charlottetown has wrapped up. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his inner circle were discussing housing policy and politics. Trudeau appears to be feeling pressure from the Conservatives' claims that the Liberals are responsible for the current housing situation.
Mr. Poilievre has decided, let's make them even angrier. Let's give them a scapegoat. Let's point fingers and lay blame, because that's easy, and it is. That's not my approach.
Trudeau says he recognizes Canadians are generally anxious and worried right now, and says it's important to remain, quote, positive and hopeful. He says he's focused on solutions to Canada's housing crunch, saying his government wants to work with provincial and municipal governments to get suitable housing built. But the opposition message seems to be resonating with Canadians. A new poll suggests 40% of respondents think the federal government is to blame for the housing crisis, and 95% say the rising cost of rents and lack of affordable homes are serious problems. The average price of a home in Canada hit nearly $669,000 in July. Well, New Brunswick's Department of Education is making more changes to its controversial gender identity policy for schools. The original policy said students could use their preferred pronouns and names without involving their parents. A similar policy exists at school boards here in Windsor, Essex. But earlier this year, New Brunswick's progressive conservatives reversed that. Teachers must now seek consent from parents before a student under the age of 16 is allowed to change their name. Bill Hogan is the Minister of Education.
What we're talking about is a name that's attached to a different gender than what they're identified with their parents. And in that case, if they're under the age of 16, we would require parental consent to use that. Otherwise, what we're saying is that we're keeping information from parents. And that's not the role of the school.
Hogan says new changes being introduced today will clarify some of the definitions in the policy. Critics have called the policy transphobic. Multiple school district councils have passed their own policies that effectively undo the changes. School psychologists and social workers have also filed grievances with the province, saying the changes would harm children. Well, beading is a traditional way some Indigenous people connect with their culture. One Windsor woman is doing just that, but she's learning in a not-so-traditional way. CBC Windsor's Alimia Abu-Zaid has her story.
Grab 2 feet of thread. Sophia White-Eye says she learned how to bead from videos like these on TikTok.
Like regular beading, like you just use a needle, you just lay down the bead.
She wanted to start beading because an Indigenous friend gifted her a pair of earrings that helped her get through a difficult period in her life. White-Eye says she started looking for classes to learn, but found none in Windsor that she can afford. She had hoped to have her grandmother teach her, but being a residential school survivor, no one in her family got to practice much of the Delaware First Nation culture.
The fact that it's 2023 and like I'm learning something that was from so long ago and that my grandma wasn't able to teach us, or my mom wasn't able to learn because my grandma wasn't, like, she was like brainwashed into not being able to do it. So it just like, it feels really good, and knowing that I have those skills and like I could do that.
TikTok was her beading teacher, but it's also helping others and keeping the culture alive.
We're still here, we're finally like, and we're fighting back in our ways, and that's just keeping it traditional and learning our stuff and spreading it to our people and our family members so that it doesn't die.
Indigenous people such as the Plains Cree, the Ojibwe, and other nations use beads made from shells, bone, stone, and other natural materials to decorate clothing, moccasins, bags, and other items. Hello everyone, my name is Jory Brennan.
Jory Weskahat is a Toronto-based Plains Cree bead artist. He puts Indigenous beading tutorials online so people like White-Eye have a place to learn.
It's there forever. It's on the internet, so people will always be able to learn from it. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok, they're giving so many like Indigenous youth and Indigenous people as well, like just Indigenous people in general, the sort of like opportunities that we never really received before.
White-Eye plans to sell her jewelry at a powwow in Chatham, Kent next month. One way she hopes will keep this part of the culture alive. Lamia Abu-Zaid, CBC News, Windsor.
Well, some menacing clouds out there earlier today. Coming up, we get to chat with Colette Kennedy about that storm that passed through and what kind of weather is on the horizon. Well, it's looking nice and sunny out there right now, but that certainly couldn't be said for the earlier part of the day. I snapped these pictures of a very menacing Detroit skyline around noon today. Look at that dark cloud sitting just above Detroit. And this was the view looking west, those low-hanging clouds looking almost like a blanket to me, but of course I'm no expert. Now, Colette Kennedy is the expert, and she joins us live to explain what was up with those clouds, Colette.
Yeah, well, I saw the second picture first, and it's kind of reminded me of like a nimbostratus. So stratus are the lower level clouds, but you know, with all the thunderstorms in the area, really it's a typical cumulonimbus cloud and the bottom. Okay, maybe it's a bit atypical. It almost looked like it was starting to form what we call a mammatus cloud. Yeah, so I'm throwing a lot of them out there. But the pillows of those tend to be like smaller in terms of the features of how they look, and it's really dramatic. So I'm not sure if it was on its way to that in terms of the development, but really, yeah, some strange conditions, getting back into sun and humidity after thunderstorms, more thunderstorms on the way. And we know we're just on the edge of that heat dome. So 25 degrees, we're so close. I threw Lansing on the map because I wanted to give you an example of just how close that heat is at 33 degrees. Chicago, 36. I mean, 38 is 100 Fahrenheit, and that's where Sioux City is. So that incredible heat, we're just on the edge, but that humidity has certainly pushed in. Detroit only a degree warmer than we sit at the moment. And I'll show you the temperatures, how much cooler they are, where the rains were heavier and more consistent and persistent through the day in kind of the same areas earlier where 50 millimeters was picked up before even getting into the afternoon hours. The humidex, you could see how the values are more than 10-degree difference there between Kitchener and Windsor. And then not only is it the thunderstorm activity and some of the heavy rains in here with some ponding possible and pooling of that rain, but let me put the lightning strikes on here. Very dramatic, incredible rate of lightning that we're experiencing, and then just a little bit further west, right into the sunshine. So still looking at the rainfall warning for these areas because we're not clearly, I was showing you the radar, out of the woods yet, but it is kind of sinking to the south and west. So if not into Windsor, very close by, look towards Point Pelee, Leamington, really seeing this kind of pushing through. So it will wind down, but then we'll see a little bit more activity flare up into the overnight hours. Then tomorrow, we may even see some sunshine for the early part of the day, but do not become complacent that it's all over with, because another round will come through tomorrow late afternoon into the evening with more heavy rain on the way. So just a weather pattern when you're right on the edge of that dome like that, we can get stronger winds and we get all this kind of unsettled weather. Tomorrow we slide into that dome, so that temperature going up to 32 degrees for the high, Meg, for tomorrow, and the humidex will be likely closer to 40.
Colette, I'm going to have to get my amateur picture skills ready for the next set of storms that come through.
Yes, I'll look forward to you could quiz me.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, one country has just made history by landing on the south pole of the moon. We'll share with you who it was and what that means for space exploration coming up. The U.S. Weather Prediction Center is warning about another searing heat wave south of the border. Nearly 150 million people are under a heat warning from Minnesota to Texas. Temperatures could run higher than 40 degrees in some areas. Several record high temperatures are expected to be set in the Midwest and South. People are being advised to take the heat seriously and avoid extended periods of time outdoors. Well, officials in Hawaii are having a tough time locating hundreds of people unaccounted for after the deadly wildfires that tore through parts of Maui. So far, 115 people have been confirmed dead, but more than 1,000 names remain on the FBI's list of people unaccounted for, including many children. Authorities are now pleading with relatives of the missing to give DNA samples. It's a debate tonight in Milwaukee. 8 Republicans who hope to become the party's presidential candidate face off for the first time. But frontrunner Donald Trump is skipping the event. The former president plans to be in Georgia tomorrow, where he says he'll be proudly arrested. As the CBC's Magda Gabriselassie explains, Trump and his associates are facing conspiracy charges.
While former President Donald Trump is expected to show up at the Fulton County Jail tomorrow, a few of his co-defendants have already started to turn themselves in. Trump and his 18 co-defendants have been charged with racketeering, as well as a long list of other charges, accused of carrying out unlawful activities to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia and beyond. Now today, Rudy Giuliani flew into the state to surrender. The former Trump lawyer and former New York mayor is facing 13 counts. Along with the charge related to racketeering, he's also accused of making false statements and a number of conspiracy-related charges as well.
I feel like I'm defending the rights of all Americans, as I did so many times as a United States attorney. People like to say I'm different. I'm the same Rudy Giuliani that took down the mafia, that made New York City the safest city in America.
Another of the accused, John Eastman, turned himself in yesterday. He maintains he was doing his job as a lawyer.
I'm here today to surrender to an indictment that should never have been brought. It targets attorneys for their zealous advocacy on behalf of their clients, something attorneys are ethically bound to provide, and which was attempted here by formally challenging the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means.
Again, Trump says he will be turning himself in tomorrow. His bond conditions have already been set. Now, separate from all of this, there is an event tonight where Trump will be a no-show. The first Republican presidential primary debate is happening in Milwaukee. 8 other candidates that met the requirements will be there. Among them, Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, former Vice President Mike Pence, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. As for Trump, there are reports that he's done a recorded interview with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and that online interview is expected to be released tonight. Magda Gabriselassie, CBC News, Washington.
India made history today by landing a spacecraft on the south pole of the moon. It's the first country to do that, and the mission could put India in the forefront of lunar research. The CBC's Salima Shivji reports from Mumbai.
And we are nearing and approaching the lunar surface.
India's Space Mission Control tense and alert as its landing rover inched closer and closer to the moon's south pole, a notoriously difficult maneuver on rough terrain. While a nation held its breath, watching in nervous anticipation and excitement, praying for a successful landing for Chandrayaan-3.
Lander module.
And it was flawless, India's space agency said, as pure joy and relief spread through the control room.
We have achieved soft landing on the moon. India is on the moon.
A big win for India's space program and the country's reputation, 4 years after its first try failed and mere days after Russia's competing attempt to race to the moon's south crash-landed. For India, the mission marks its arrival as a powerhouse in space exploration.
This success belongs to all of humanity, and it will help moon missions by other countries in the future.
For the global science community, it's a chance to explore the enticing unknown.
This is showing the South Pole,
with a number of craters.
Craters that scientists think are storing frozen water that could lead to a future settlement on the moon.
It seems there's a lot of water present in this area, and so great possibility to exploit in situ.
This mission is historic. Not only is India a developing nation, now the first country to reach the moon's south pole, its space agency has done it on a much smaller budget than other countries.
A feat that was celebrated in the streets. The expectation is that India's moon landing will boost the country's burgeoning private space sector and inspire future generations to dream about space and all of its possibilities. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.